All right, good morning, everyone. This is 007 episode for me on Sunday Morning Coffee with Dr. Maron. And I have a very special guest for you guys today. He has been with me for 4 years. He is an astonishing MMA artist and just such a humble dude. I really appreciate working with him. And I really wanted to introduce you guys to him, get to know him a little bit more. He is booming in the PFL division, and I'm just so excited to have him on today. So thank you, Jordan, for coming on. Jordan is 26 years old. He is a mixed martial artist who has a big background in Jiu Jitsu. And he just came off a big win. What was that, 2 weeks ago now, right?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. And he has just flew through his professional career. I mean, at 26 years old, being 12-2, it's just amazing. So I'm going to give Jordan the floor. I want him to give us a little more background into his story and how he started. And then we'll kind of dive deep into where you're at now.
For sure. First and foremost, thanks for having me on, Doc. I've been a fan of this, your little podcast. I enjoy listening to the episodes. I always learn something. I met Doc, like she said, for going on 5 years almost now, and we started working together. I was already in Bellator at the time. It was before I had surgery or anything like that, but that was like the direction I was going in. And thank God I met her when I did, because things really went left for me. But before that, before I met Doc or anything like that, just a little bit about my background. I've been training like Jiu Jitsu and, the different forms of mixed martial arts since I was like 14 or 15 years old. And I started taking serious at like 16. And
what made you sorry to cut you off, but what made you actually get into jiu-jitsu? Was because you used to play football and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I played some football, and I was pretty good. I had I feel a bright future in that sport too if I wanted to. But in high school, there's not always like other athletes around that are like you. Like I was just a bigger athlete, and being 6'2", 6'3" in high school, that didn't necessarily mean that I was like meant to be built like a lineman. You know what I mean? So I was playing like defensive line and offensive line, and like just that's not the body frame that I knew. I knew I didn't have to be that sloppy, and part of that was just due to me not necessarily being like on the athletic ball growing up. You know what I mean? So I started to find that a little bit when I started to train jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, and I started to fix my diet and take it a little more serious. And really what made me stick with it at first was just the changes in my health and the changes in my appearance, and getting like in shape and reaching the goals that I set out for myself. I started to look how I want to look, and then that became, I started to find that I was good. And then when I started to figure that out, then I didn't want to do football anymore, and I was like an abrupt and fast, so my sophomore year, I just wanted to quit and be done with that. And that was like a big thing at the school I was at. You know what I mean? I was like a problem. They didn't like that, and so now I'm like very respected in my hometown because I did exactly what I said I was gonna do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Jordan is from Des Moines, Iowa. So him being all the way down in South Florida, I mean, you've traveled all over the U.S. for training, especially. So coming out of Des Moines, Iowa, which, I mean, when you talk about fighting, for me being from New York, I didn't know that there was any type of fighting over there or any type of, big presence of fighting. So, I mean, yeah, that's huge. I mean, your name is huge over there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's huge everywhere right now, but yeah.
I feel like I get a lot of love in Des Moines for sure, and I show Des Moines love too because that's where I grew up, and I was very focused on MMA. I was a good kid. I was like from the time I started training and whatnot, I was out of the way. I wasn't doing anything I wasn't supposed to do, and Des Moines took care of me. You know what I mean? Like as my name got bigger, I got a lot of good opportunities, and then once I left the city, they still put me in the newspaper and like. That's awesome. And on the news and whatnot. So I always have a love for them for sure.
How did you find jiu-jitsu? Like, did you just go into the gym? Like, did your buddy or someone have an interest, or like how did that start?
It's crazy. It wasn't like I was going for jiu-jitsu. That's just kind of what I stuck with and what was like stood out to me. But people always ask me how I got into MMA and whatnot, and like what my mom thinks, because I'm raised by a single mother, and she's the person who kind of got me involved. You know what I mean? She was dating a guy who she was like, he was a big MMA fan, and she liked MMA, and he kind of like was consistent with getting the pay-per-views and whatnot. I didn't really care for that. I was like doing my own thing, and I was more into like gangster movies and the Sopranos and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, but you know, she wanted me to train and whatnot, and jiu-jitsu is just kind of what that gave me a little discipline, and like I said, was getting me in shape and whatnot. But
Yeah.
what made that stand out to me though was like the first form of I did a Muay Thai fight. You know, I train Muay Thai as well.
Okay.
But my first like competition was a Muay Thai fight, I guess you can say. But after that, I went to Las Vegas, and that was like when I was 16 years old, and I was training there for like 6 weeks, and I did a jiu-jitsu tournament there, and I won that whole jiu-jitsu tournament. So the Muay Thai, it was like a Muay Thai tournament, and there was 3 fights, and I won 2 of the 3. So I lost the 3rd fight, and I didn't
sit well.
Motivation or anything, you know what I mean? But winning the whole jiu-jitsu tournament, that was like, you know, definitely that meant something to me. Yeah.
Now you also trained on the West Coast too, right?
Yeah, so Vegas was my first introduction to the West Coast when I was 16, and then when I came back after, so that 16-year-old summer when I'm in Vegas and I come back, that's my sophomore year. So when I go into that sophomore year, I'm like, I don't want to do football. I just won this jiu-jitsu tournament in Las Vegas, and I'm like focused on that. You know what I mean? So I quit football, and I was focused on doing that. And then, you know, after sophomore year, I went to, or I think maybe during spring break sophomore year, I went to California to train. I spent like 2 weeks there training, and then I was infatuated with California. So that summer, I spent that summer in California. And then that kind of was like a repetitive thing where like every few months I would go for 6 weeks to 2 months at a time and do the whole West Coast thing until I was maybe like 19 years old. And then I moved to Arizona. And so how that happened was I had a friend who I met in San Diego who moved to Arizona and had like an apartment there set up, and he was training at this gym called Power MMA. So like that's like Ryan Bader's gym. He's like the biggest name out of there. But he hit me up and he said, you know, I got an extra room, and like, if you want to come stay with me and whatnot. And I was training in Des Moines at the time and still like traveling back and forth from the West Coast to Des Moines. So I was like, all right, let's go check AZ out. So I lived with him in Arizona for half a year, and I trained at Power MMA. There was a lot of good wrestlers there. That was a good experience. I enjoyed Arizona. You know, the terrain is different there. I enjoyed like climbing Camelback Mountain and whatnot. But I had my 5th professional fight around this time. So, you know, I'm already like well into my professional career a little bit.
And you turned pro at what age?
19.
Holy man.
19 years old. So when I'm like in Arizona and whatnot, I think I'm 21 at this time, maybe fresh 21, and or 20 better yet. And I moved to South Florida from AZ. I won that 5th pro fight or whatever. So I was 5-0 at the time. And I was just ready to lock in with like an official team. Power was a good gym, but they had holes in their gym. You know what I mean? It was a lot of wrestlers, and that's not really my style. So I was like getting good training there, but that's not where I wanted to like base my career out of. So that kind of led me to American Top Team.
And what sparked your interest in American Top Team?
You know, during my travels, I spent a lot of time on the West Coast, but when I was 17 or 18 years old, I was in Coconut Creek, and I trained at the old American Top Team before they had this new location where they're at now. They were like a few blocks away, and I went to that location and trained there. And I wasn't a pro fighter yet, so I just trained jiu-jitsu, but I got up close and got to see everything. And you know, that was like the highest level of like team training under one roof that I had saw. But I didn't have connections in Florida, South Florida. You know what I mean? I didn't have nowhere to like hit people up to help me out if I need anything, or to go lay my head and stuff like that. On the West Coast, I had a surplus of houses to stay at and different contacts to get cars and stuff like that. So the West Coast was a no-brainer for me. So outside of that 1 or 2 trips when I was younger, I didn't really dabble in Florida at all. But I knew in the back of my head that there was like a gym there that I could see myself ending my career at. So, you know, with the little bit of money I had and whatnot at 5-0, how that came about was I actually fought on a card with some guys from the Black Zillions, which is another gym in Florida. And I won that fight, like I said, and they reached out to me and they said, like, you had a good performance. We'd like to bring you to South Florida and we'll put you up or whatever and see if you like the gym. And that was cool, but I had already been to American Top Team and I knew that like that was like super organized and that's where I could see myself being. So at that time I was in Arizona and I wasn't really feeling the power situation. So I reached out to American Top Team myself. I knew some guys there. I got the email of the general manager and I just emailed them and kind of said like, I'm 5-0 and I take my career very serious and I've been to your gym before and I'd like to come back and see if it's a good fit. And he said, yeah, for sure. We have dorms, come out and we'll put you up for a week and see what it is. So I flew out there and stayed for a week. And I remember like I knew nobody this way. So when I was like staying in the dorms that week, I really had nothing to do but train. And it worked out well. Of course, they liked me because I'm a hard worker. And I moved there like within 3 months.
That's amazing. And you spent how long in the dorms there?
So when I moved to South Florida, so I came in like the beginning of the year and then I moved there in like May of 2016, I think. And when I moved there, I was staying in the dorms for like a solid 10 months. It was a long time in the dorms. That was never the plan though. I moved there and like had plans to fight and make money and like branch out and whatnot. But when I came down, since I wasn't in the Midwest anymore, I didn't want to fight there anymore. And I didn't have connections out here. So I met my first like management company, which is First Round Management at the time. That's who I signed to. They were down here and we had a meeting and they got me signed to Bellator. So when I signed to Bellator at the time, I thought it was the greatest thing. I'm like signed fast and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be fighting in Bellator, make some money. I'll be able to branch out and do everything I planned. But Bellator, like they didn't really give me a fight for I think 8 months. So for that 8 months, I didn't have any money to make. I don't do anything but fight. So I was living in the dorms and training. And like, I remember at the time, like I was not super negative about it, but it was like a negative emotion. You know what I mean? I wasn't,
of course.
But it was a positive situation because, I got my base at American Top Team. I was there every day, living upstairs, training, 2-3 times a day. So I seen how everything operated and I got to meet everybody and just be super consistent. So it got me my respect and let them know how hard of a worker I am. And so when my first camp did come, I already had strong relationships with like Dia Davis, my boxing coach, Mike Brown, my MMA coach. And that paid off. It's like some guys come to American Top Team and you're not able to get the top coaches in the gym to give you that one-on-one and whatnot. But having worked for 8 months and helping their guys out before I ever asked for anything back, it paid off for me. And so when I did get that fight though, and I was 1-0 in Bellator. The next fight came really fast 2 months later. And then once I got that fight, I was able to get a car. And so once I got a car, American Top Team was like, all right, cool. We're going to move you from the dorms to like 10 minutes down the street. We have like some rental properties. They're like quadplexes or something like that, like 4 houses. So there's like a lot of fighters staying over there. I shared a house with like 3 different fighters and I was doing my thing there. And I fought one more time. So that was 3 fights in a year for Bellator. And after that first year of Bellator, I was able to get out of my contract with my management, get new management. And with the new deal, I signed a new deal with Bellator. They gave me like an advance on my money.
That's
like
great.
So if people don't know, it's like when I say that, it's like when you fight MMA, you get paid, 2 checks. You get paid your first check just to show up. And then your second check you get if you win your fight. So if you take an advance, you're getting an advance on the portion that you get for showing up. So if you lose, you're getting even less than 50% of your money. So that was like a risky thing to do, but I need to do it to get like my first spot out here. So I was able to get a house and from there, that was my second contract with Bellator. So that was like my 4th fight. So we're entering like fight number 9 of my career at that point. And
you were still undefeated the whole time.
Yeah, but this is when I meet
yes.
Chief Doc. Yeah.
Yes.
So now you came to American Top Team. You can take it over a bit and explain how it is.
how I got into American Top Team was through Phil DeRue, who was the head strength and conditioning coach there at the time. And Phil and I had connected because of mutual, acquaintances that we all worked together in this field, whether it was nutrition, strength and conditioning, physical therapy. I had a big connection to a physical therapist up north in New York, Mike Camp, Dr. Michael Camp, and Tony Ricci. Now Tony's down here actually in Fort Lauderdale teaching at Nova with, Corey Peacock. So I had come down, and I didn't expect to grow a business by myself right away. I know a lot of my followers already know my story, but I had actually worked with a professional boxer of mine, Chris Algieri, up in New York, and he tends to train down here with Derek Santos, who also helps you with boxing.
Yeah.
And
good coach.
Yes. And Chris had said to me, he had something going on with his shoulder. He's getting ready for a fight. He was in between a loss of contract. And he was like, why aren't you working with any of the fighters down here? Because that was what I was doing up in New York. And surprisingly enough, I really didn't know there was a big fight world down here, which I'm really not sure. MMA was so different, when I was watching it, especially when you're talking about even before Ronda Rousey came out, it was like, I didn't, I knew of the fighters, but you didn't know where they were training. You didn't know all this stuff. And in New York, the training isn't under one roof. So if you wanted to go to boxing, you were driving out to Brooklyn. If you were going to go do strength and conditioning, you're out in Long Island. So there was
courses as well.
Yeah. So there was nothing under one roof. And so Chris had said, let me connect you to a couple of these guys. There'll be good connects for you. You'll, and vice versa. So he had introduced me to Phil, and it was I think midnight one night, and I had just DM'd Phil, and I was like, hey, I'm going on a long shot here. I thought it'd be a good connect if we could meet up, maybe meet each other, kind of see where our, I guess our beliefs are with strength and conditioning and physical therapy and stuff. And I thought we'd just be a good connect. I work with a lot of fighters up in New York. So he actually responded and was like, hey, I'd love to meet you. I met with him and a couple of his interns at the time. We met for a cup of coffee at Whole Foods. And it was funny because we were actually sitting outside of Whole Foods, and Dustin Poirier walked out of Whole Foods, and I'd said hi to Phil and shook hands and stuff. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize everyone's right here. Yeah. So we connected well, and he's like, why don't you come, bring your table and work on a couple of guys late at night. I was working that job. I was at a part-time job. I was trying to build my business. So I took I think I went there at 8:00 at night. I think you guys were all done training at the time. And I just set my table up in the back of ATT, and, if anyone wanted to come and meet me and get some work done, Phil and I made a couple of videos. And that's kind of how I met you, because I remember I was going there to help out, and he said you had something going on with your back, and it was only you that I worked on that day too. And I remember you had the back issue and your hip issue. It was just starting, and that it took off from there between you and I.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, we did a little bit of work. I came and seen you, I think maybe once or twice outside of ATT before that fight. And once I got that win, it got a little bit worse. If you want to continue on the storyline.
Yeah. I mean, if I can share, it was nerve wracking to me on my end. I mean, I tell you this now because, we have such a relationship that we do, but I remember thinking after the first fight, I remember saying I really think that there's something wrong with his hip. You definitely had the sacroiliac joint issue, but the extent, especially when you talk about hip labrums, it's not something a surgery that I necessarily want an athlete to have, right? Because in my career, which, hasn't been that long, but in my experience, it's a 50-50 shot. I've had lacrosse athletes, especially females, get a labral repair done, and then it goes out the window. It was almost pointless to have it.
Yeah.
So then you had fought the second fight that year, and you won that. And then it had gotten even a little bit worse after that fight. And I was like, oh man, And I remember that third fight of the year. I did not want you fighting it. I remember saying it to you. I know you heard me say it. But you know, you had to fight. You had a contract, you needed the money. And and we talk about this now, and people that'll listen to this, if you're a physical therapist or you're a coach and you have an athlete under your tutelage, having the right words to say, that's medical judgment versus understanding someone's life, is the hardest decision you have to make, because deep down, the medical decision is, look, he needs to get the surgery. At that point, your hip was gone. In better words, it was gone. And, he's not someone who can't not use his hip, right? He's someone who's got to do almost 1,000 kicks in a setting sometimes. And you're not talking just low kicks, you're talking high kicks, you're talking front kicks, So, and then the grappling and the bending and everything. So, at that point, it's like, well, he has to fight. It's contract, it's money. He has to do it. I didn't want him to fight it. But, you have to also, you have to be there as a person too. So that was the first blemish on your record, that loss. And I remember taking that. And as I've learned working with you guys, I took that so personally, because I just knew you had come so far in your career at such a young age. And I felt like you didn't deserve to lose that fight. But you barely could have a camp, and again, I invest so much, I love you. I invest so much of my energy into my clients. And so when you lose, I feel like I let you down, or I lost, but, we built up from that. So that's when you had reached out to, was it Stidham?
Yeah.
Stidham, who did your surgery. So Jordan reached out to the surgeon in California who worked on a lot of the Bellator guys. And he had the surgery. And even on the phone, we had multiple late night calls between Dr. Stidham, Jordan, and I.
Time difference it is from California to
but just to get an idea of where his head was at too, operating on his hip again at such a young age. He asked a lot of my opinion on his hip, because he couldn't see Jordan physically. He only saw the MRI report. So being that translator for the athlete to say, hey, look, this is my concern. He can barely do this. He's supposed to fight. Like, there's no reason, there's no way he can continue this career if he doesn't get something done. We had done PRP injections, everything. And at that point, his cartilage was pretty much gone. So
sometimes a week.
Yep. So he had the surgery, and we did PT, and even Jordan made me put, boxing gloves on and mitts. It's a pretty big height difference. Jordan taught me a lot holding mitts, but it was great to watch you recover. And remember that conversation we had with Stidham, and he was like, we asked about running, and he was like, well, I don't know, we'll see if that's possible. And now you run all the time, and now your hip is not even like, that's not even something we even worry about anymore. So it was crazy to see you go through that. And then COVID happened. So that was a whole year of not fighting. I think, when did you sign with PFL after that?
I signed. So this is what's crazy. I had the loss in November. I flew to California. I spent a couple of weeks with my management. It was my birthday. I was putting salt in my wounds, if you'll call it that. And then I met with the PFL, and we signed at the end of the year. When we signed, at the time, the plan was for the tournament, the 2020 tournament, to start in April or May. And so I had surgery the beginning of December, and I was recovering from that surgery. And then right there, and when does COVID kick off? In March? So
yeah, it was March.
When COVID happens, then they say, like, okay, well, we're not going to have a tournament this year.
Season.
Everything was like up in the air, what was going on. So a lot of uncertainty, but we stuck with the PT. It was kind of a blessing in disguise. We needed the time for the hip. So, It took us really like, we were going to try to fight 6 to 7 months into recovery.
I think it was earlier. I think you were going to fight at 5. And I felt like you were pretty good at, 4, which is super. Like, if I say that now and people are watching this, they're going to be like, 4 months, like, he shouldn't be back in 4 months. But again, we got to do what you have to do for your career and your life. But yeah, I think we were going to put you in back at like 4 or 5 months. And then we had the extra time because they had canceled everything.
Yeah. I think at 10 months though, is when we really said, okay.
Yeah.
And like, your body's not gonna, you can perform without 2 days, a day, 2 days later, your body caving in on itself.
Right.
And
the soreness.
Exactly.
Well, you also had, because you weren't training, and here's the negative side, like, when you have an athlete that's used to training 2-3 times a week, and yes, they have an off season or off months, they're still doing something, whether that's SNC, whether that's a little bit of shadow boxing, mitts, whatever it is. It's movement. It's, movement is therapy, movement is everything. So when you weren't able to train, I think that's when other things started happening, like your back, your neck, all this other stuff. So it was a long, crazy year too. And like you said, it was like a blessing in disguise. We had the time to work on things and get you healthy and put you in a position to, start off your season the way you needed to. And then that first fight of this season was, you had like 3 different people you were supposed to fight, and then they didn't fight you.
Yeah. So I'd say, like, around the end of last year, we started feeling really good. We started training hard, like November, December, and going into this year, I had consistency from, January. I competed in the beginning of February.
The Jiu Jitsu.
And it left like a nasty bruise on my leg, and like my body didn't react to the live competition. Not fresh back from surgery, but fresh back from, full recovery. And, we had to recover while still getting ready for April. And we had a good camp. It was good. I was in good shape. I felt really dialed in, and we had all those pullouts. And, this is like catching us up to real present time right now. We didn't have the fight. I got paid. Like, I won the fight though. I was able to come back and get the current house I'm in and take care of my bills and whatnot. And then we had the second fight. It didn't go my way. No excuses. I don't think that I did everything I could have did. And there was no guarantee that I was going to get to fight again this year and whatnot. So I was kind of like, once again, putting salt in my wounds and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And luckily they called, and it was kind of a short notice situation. This last fight was
6 weeks, right?
6.5 weeks. And I was in California. I was in California seeing like, this guy, he works with some fighters and whatnot. He's like, they call him the OC Fight Doc. He's in Orange County, California. And I was getting like some pressure relief shots. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, lidocaine,
lidocaine shots, getting some lidocaine in my shoulders and whatnot. And I called Doc, I called ATT, I called all my coaches, and we all had the same agreement that, I was going to put in all the work I could and go as hard as I could. And, we were going to go out there and do that fight, especially with it being in South Florida and me being able to work with Dr. Christiana so close to the fight. That's something I didn't have the prior fights, being in New Jersey and quarantined for 3 weeks prior. I work with Dr. Christiana once a week on the minimum, and, getting close to that fight is very important. I start to dial back and feel 100%, and no excuses, but not being able to work with her was definitely, even before I had met her on fight week, I would be doing things like trying to get a massage and get like as much relief to feel good. So once I found her and we got everything dialed in, to not have that option was definitely, a takeaway, because once we had her for this past fight, it's a game changer for me. You know what I mean? I felt amazing, and everything was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, it was definitely great to be with you, even up like after weigh-ins, like to work on you after weigh-ins, like the night before. You were so at peace. And I knew then that night, you and I had our conversation that night, but I knew you were going to win it. Like deep down, I was just like, Like I had all the faith in the world. Like I wasn't nervous. I was like, because I think the biggest part was that we had you healthy. You were 100%. I watched you the whole time. Like I had control in it. And when they did the whole quarantine thing for you guys, like, oh, you need to be there 17 days prior to, I mean, that's a whole month without, you know, your training partners, some of your coaches, your therapists, you know, strength and conditioning, it's all gone.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that was such a negative thing. I mean, you know, COVID and the pandemic is what it is, but I think that really hindered you and a lot of other fighters. Like a lot of the guys from New York, they didn't get to go back in the gym for a long time because of how closed off and restricted New York was. But then they got these guys on the cards and the fights. So it's like, you know, you can't get in to see your therapist, you can't in to see your coach, you can't go into Brooklyn, can't go to this. So like a lot of these New York guys, I felt bad for them because they were going in and losing some of these fights that, you know, they're getting, at least to me, I didn't think they should have lost. But again, you take into those accounts, like you don't have your normal routine, you know, you didn't even have a microwave in your, you know, your hotel room, you can't leave. Like there's so many variables that I really don't think they took into account, you know, for you guys that, you know, moving forward, if something like this were to happen again, hopefully never again, but that they don't do that. Like they try to keep things as normal as possible, because I just think that was, I think that was a huge factor into like, you were, again, no excuse, yes, but it, like you didn't look yourself that fight, you know, against Tommy Lawler. So it was, to me, I was like, I just wish I had more control, you know, and you can't, you know. So I think it was just such a great thing to have you. And then again, after how long we've been together, just to be with you up until the night before, even after weigh-ins was great. But just seeing you live was amazing. I mean, everyone around me knows, your mother included. You know, it was like the 2 years we had of the stress of COVID, your hip, your, you know, all the ups and downs in life. I felt like the weight came off your shoulders. It came off my, whatever weight you had on your shoulders. I felt like I had some of it, and I just like was like, okay, you know, you deserve to be. And you know, we had that hug right afterwards. I cried, you cried. It was a moment where I was like, yes, like fucking yes, fine. Like you needed that. I needed to see you have that opportunity. And I'm just so looking forward to the 2022 season, because I'm just ready for you to just do what you had intended your whole career. So it was such a blessing to be there. But talking about that, let's go in. You have a lot of questions here.
Yeah.
Because some of these have to do with, well, one of them has to do with this past fight. Okay, so we're going to go into questions that I've gotten asked over the past week. Usually when I state that I'm going to do the podcast, I get questions and feedback from just followers, fans. So one of the questions was, is where did you find the strength and poise in your last fight, in that last round, and knock Omari out?
You know, so a little background to the story that people may or may not know. Omari was one of my teammates. So I've known Omari quite well. I met Omari when I was, I moved to American Top Team 5 years ago. And so I was like 21 years old, 22 years old. I met Omari when I was like maybe 22 years old. And I was an 85er at the time, and he was an 85er, and we sparred. And it was like intense sparring back then. And it was like a super good fight. But think about it, I was a kid then, and I hadn't really like grown and stuff like that. So when the fight was offered to me, there's nothing like when you get offered a fight against an individual that you've never even seen in person before. There's a lot of unknown variables there. This is somebody that like, I felt his power, his wrestling, his striking. I knew a lot about him. I knew his conditioning. So to answer the question, I always stay calm, but like with him particularly, I knew from the 8-minute mark on from the fight, things would be a lot easier for me. And you know, even in his last fight in the UFC back in July against Brad Tavares, the 3rd round was the roughest round for him. And you know, I'm bigger than him. He's coming up a weight class, so I just knew I would have my way in the 3rd.
And he's also what, 10 years older than you?
I think he's
I'm
34.
not sure.
He's
Yeah,
34.
he's that's a good age difference too. Especially when you're sparring him at like 22. That's pretty big. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, Omari also. It's just like you guys are two different like statures too. You know what I mean? Very different. So yeah, watching you knock him out with the right hook was just like it was awesome. But you've also been now. Did you think that you're going to be more like you were going to get him down on the ground and submit? Because you submit. I mean, you've won what 7 of your fights through submission.
I think it's 9, but with 9. I don't try to ever like take people down and submit them necessarily. I've taken a couple guys down. Maybe they reversed me and I caught a submission or something like that. But a lot of times this guy's taking me down and being on top of me and like applying that pressure to me when I submit them. So with Omari, it was always tough to submit him in the gym. So I wasn't really thinking about the submission. I was more so not even really thinking about the finish. Of course, I want the finish, and if it's there, I'm going to take it. But I was more so just trying to win the positions, win the battles, win the wrestling exchanges. The first round, I won the first wrestling exchange by not getting taken down, and I was kind of just making reads and filling them out. He won the second wrestling exchange by taking me down. In the second round, I didn't have plans on giving him top position at all, but he was able to get that high kick and get me off my feet. So when he was able to do that, he got top position again.
Well, and I think that's where he got exhausted. I don't want to say gassed. I don't want to say exhausted, but I mean, at least from what I saw, I feel like he had, again, you're a strong grappler, you're a strong jiu-jitsu artist that I think you giving him, I think he thought he had you in that second round, and you really, beautiful. Like, I even said when that was happening, I was like, this kid will never go out by submission. Never go out by submission. And you got out of it. And I think that he used so much energy to get you in that clinch right there. And then you stood up and you got out. So, and it was, like I said, I think that, the way you even ended the whole thing was just beautiful. And just to say you have your first TKO on your record is just, it's awesome.
It was like an interesting, like, the crowd got really loud and vocal.
Yeah.
When he kicked me off my feet, and it's like the referee, the judges, the crowd, his coaches, him, nobody has a decision in what's going to happen in that fight except me in terms of my will and like, so like when he kicked me off my feet, everybody started making all this noise as if like maybe the fight was close to being over, and he started moving faster with his punches and etc. Yes. Like he thought the same thing. So I get what you're saying when you say he gave up a little bit of energy right there for sure. Because I never was out of the fight or felt like I would give up. You know what I mean?
No, but again, I know you. Yeah. The rest of I was sitting around some of his fans, and I was like, no.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
No, sorry, no. But then, like I said, I think like you said, one of the biggest things I think is amazing, even watching like the UFC fights all the time, is like how the crowd reacts and like how you guys feed off of it. Because I also say, like, do you feel like sometimes you can't always read what's going on in the fight, and then the way the crowd's reacting, you're like, oh, like you have to react because of the way the crowd's reacting?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was saying. Like they were making all this noise, and I heard that, but I was just like, I'm still in this fight. I'm gonna continue to fight my fight. So like, when he went for the submission, and like I think he maybe thought, you know what I mean, the rise in the energy in the room kind of gave me the read that like maybe he thought too that he was close to getting me out of there.
Right. I know a lot of guys
will quit right there, and they'll tap whether they're getting choked or not, or they'll just give you the choke because they don't want to get punched out. But I'm not thinking about a way out. You know what I mean?
No, I just watching the fights last night, even too. If some of them are just like slugfest, So you see when the crowd starts going, and then they just start slugging more, and I'm like, okay, no one's thinking right now. Everyone's just like, we're just reacting. Yeah, 100%. I do. I think again, getting to watch you live, I've watched all your fights, but watching you live and just seeing how, I like how the person asked this question too, like how poised you were, you know, you just looked like you had full control. And I know your cardio is great. But you really did. You just, you keep this, this energy to you that is like, okay, is this guy really like a killer, or because you are just so composed. But even in your fighting, like you are very calculated, and it's really cool to see, because like I said, some guys come out and I think just the nervous energy or whatever that is, you know, they just go, and like almost like they like shoot their load right then and there. And then like you just like, you know, you're so calculated with it. It's like you can see everything that's going on, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another one. What are your thoughts or feelings moments before stepping into the cage?
You know, I personally, I like to be in the moment. You know what I mean? You can only control what's going on literally right then in the moment. So this last fight, I found a lot of like peace, if you will. I was just there for the fight. I was very it was great. It was amazing. This was a great pre-fight for me. I've gotten great advice before, because some guys deal with like, you know, thoughts invading their brain that shouldn't be there right before they fight. And you know, it's like, if you make the thoughts your friend, you know what I mean? Like the fear and the anxiety and whatnot, then it kind of works with you. But if you look at it like your enemy, like you're dreading it, and like you're not looking forward to what's going on, then it kind of works against you. And that's when those thoughts form and whatnot. So I just really enjoyed the whole day. I enjoyed the warm up, the process. I just enjoyed the fact that I was getting the opportunity to perform and entertain for finance. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's definitely amazing. Like I said, that the poise you have. I always think about it too. I mean, I had anxiety. I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? I had someone be like, are you religious? Because I blessed myself before you came out. And they were like, Chris looked at me and was like, I was like, you know, just whatever. So I always say, like, especially when you look at the publicity that goes behind all these guys, even at the level of the UFC too. I mean, there is just so much like comments and opinions and you know, what the odds are and all this stuff. And it's like, how do you keep so like aware but controlled in your thought process with all that floating around? You know, some people have like, one comment is negative and it's like, you know, they just shut down. Like, how do you control all that? Because there is in mixed martial arts, there's so much between, you know, it's a very popular sport. There's so much commentation. There's so many thoughts, comment, you know, people's opinions, and how do you stay so controlled with that?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I think that when you start getting sucked into that, you're allowing outside variables. Like none of that has an actual effect on the fight. I'm going into a cage closed, and we're gonna have to fight. And then like afterwards is when all these opinions and stuff, like, I guess some people deal with it before too. People have opinions when fights are announced and all this stuff. But like, just to me personally, none of that stuff has an effect on what's actually going to happen. And the moment that I allow it to play into anything is when things will go really bad. You know what I mean? So I just believe in my thoughts and the people around me. If I don't talk to you every day, then I'm probably not really too concerned with your opinion, you know?
Opinion, yeah, 100%. That's why I loved your tweet. Was it your tweet afterwards? It was like, Mr. Fuck your parlay or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. The odds kind of crazy. Like in our second round, they had me like a plus 1,100, you know, underdogs. Like you put $100 on me, you win $1,100. It's crazy.
Yeah, that it was definitely really cool to watch. Okay, here's another one. What is something you struggle with mentally being a fighter, and how do you overcome it?
Like probably not eating, you know, like not eating that plate of lasagna. You know what I mean? Like we got to be pretty strict like year round. And for me, though, like on a serious note, you know, everything you do counts. And there's a lot of things that I like to indulge in that, you know, you can't indulge in 24/7 or it will have a negative effect on your career, because like every second counts. And if it's you and your future opponent that you don't even know you have, right, and you guys are both living every single day a certain way, and like you guys are both living the same exact way, except he's just a little bit sharper. He's not indulging in maybe the plate of lasagna or the extra joint or whatever it is, and then you guys have to go and fight now. Maybe the guy who's been indulging in some extra stuff can pull it out, but if it's like neck and neck, I believe that the guy who, you know, was making those little sacrifices is probably going to come out on top. So the toughest thing I deal with is just not being able to do what I want to do 100% of the time. You know what I mean? Especially like you do a fight and like for 2 weeks, it's just like, I mean, it is what you allow it to be.
Right.
But like, if you want it to be, it's a big celebration and like everybody's just throwing roses and plates of food at your feet. But then if you don't, you know, put your train back on the tracks and go back to being humble and eating chickpeas and eggs and quinoa like you were before the fight, then you're not going to get the same results. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's like a big thing in, you know, because I used to bodybuild and stuff. That's a big thing in my world, which is, you know, I think I always used to feel like, you know, is that person that I'm trying to go against, like, are they the ones that are doing the extra cardio? Are they the ones that are getting all their meals in? Are they the ones that are drinking all the water? So like, I play this, like, when I was competing, I played this like competition in my head, like, you know, all right, I need to make sure that all my checks and balances are in order. And I want to make sure that I am that person on top. Same thing with school, same thing with work. I always, like, you see me now, I'm 24/7 with this stuff, because I don't want anyone else to be better than me. Like, it's just this crazy, insane mindset that we have, but that also makes us who we are too. But yeah, I totally agree. Not being able to do the things you want to do. I mean, a big thing for me, like, especially with business, was not being able to fly home for everyone's wedding, you know, not being able to fly home and do whatever, like go pumpkin pick, whatever it was, or see my niece's 10th birthday. Like, you know, there were so many things that like I didn't get to do, or I didn't, not necessarily like, you know, going out to concerts or whatever. It's like stuff that you want to do, you could do it, right? But that other person that you're going up against, are they that 1% better because they didn't do that stuff? So yeah, that's a big mental struggle for sure. One of the other questions was, who are your 2 top fighters of all time and why?
That's a crazy good question, because there's so many.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
All right, check this out. I got you. I'm gonna go with some OGs, because I don't want to, like, if I go new school, each of the new school fighters influenced me a different way. So we'll go with Mike Tyson, because, you know, in his like prime, you know, he was a god among men. And we'll go with Rickson Gracie. Rickson Gracie is a great mindset and also influenced a lot of, you know, he was the champion from the Gracie family. If you take Rickson and Tyson and put them together, you got an animal, pretty nasty one.
What do you like from each one of them that you, I guess, maybe internalize yourself, like that you're like, oh, well, Mike Tyson does this or Gracie does this, so.
Mike Tyson was just a real murderer, like in the way that he fought, you know what I mean? Like he had no regard for the other person's well-being, you know, he was trying to annihilate them. And that's ultimately, you know, how you have to be when you want to get them out of there. And then Rickson Gracie, he just was a real martial artist. His mindset and the way he lived his life and carried himself was wholesome. And, you know, if you want to be successful in MMA, you have to live a good life, you know? Yeah.
I'd agree with you on that too. What do you think about Mike Tyson fighting Logan Paul? Is this really happening or no?
I don't like stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I don't either.
If it does, I'd love to see Mike Tyson, you know,
fight again.
Drop him. Like, I like to see Mike Tyson if they fight. I like to see Mike Tyson like really, you know, get to hit him. Like, you know, I wouldn't want to see the guy make it to a decision or like possibly win or something like that. You know, this guy is fighting legends like Floyd. If he fought Tyson, at least Tyson's bigger than him versus, you know, he's a lot bigger than Floyd. But you're fighting legends, and then you're making it, because he didn't win against Floyd, you know what I mean? But you make
That's
it
what I still don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, and some people will probably say,
I'm off the couch and I made it to, I'm a Disney star and I made it to the decision with the great boxer. I don't like that.
I know, I don't either. But that's why I think it's all had to do about money. To be honest with you, I know some people will be like, no, it really happened. But to me, I think like he said, hey, I'll offer you X, Y, and Z. But
I'm not mad at that part. I'm not mad at the money part. But
no, I'm not either. But the legacy, that's why I'm upset too. I mean, you know, you want to do it for money. Yeah, I get it. But like your legacy, how many is he? 50-0?
Yeah, 50-0, yeah.
Yeah, you're 50-0. You've literally built an empire for yourself, and you're going to go against this YouTube guy for, I mean, I guess again, money, couple mil, whatever it is, but the legacy part is what kills me. You know, I can understand. Yeah, I can understand if you, I don't know, if you had a legacy and you were broke as hell. I mean, I get it, but you already are Floyd Money Mayweather, you know? So, yeah. Okay. So another one I got here is, what's your future plan for your career in the next 5 years?
5 years. I'm 26, turn 27 in a few weeks. So that's like my trajectory until 32. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm probably going to, you know, I'd like to get far off into this 2022 season. I think I have a year or two left here in the PFL, trying to chase as much money as I can get my hands on.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, ultimately I'll be in the UFC, and I'd like to continue to just be a successful, ever evolving, growing fighter. You know what I mean? Right now I'm renting a house. I have my bills paid here, so like I'm living comfortable, but I'd like to start to have a mortgage. I'd like to start to own a house.
Yeah. Make assets. Yeah.
You know, here in the next few years.
Yeah. I like I said, and I said this to your mom too, I think it's so cool to see you at a point where I always go by my gut instincts. Like anytime I ever have a gut instinct or a gut intuition, it's always the right thing, whether it's something I didn't want to happen or I did want to happen. That was something I really felt after this last fight of yours. Like I felt like I watched you grow into this, this great, you know, like I just feel like you're in a good point in your career right now. You had a beautiful beginning of your career, being undefeated, and I'm looking forward to see you, you know, I know you're turning 27, but to go now, because like I said, I really think you've hit all the little bumps you needed to hit in life. Granted, life will come with more hits and bumps and stuff like that, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you, especially this season, but just watching you grow into your 30s and you know, be along for the process with you. So I'm really excited for you, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I appreciate it, Doc. I appreciate, you know, you being by my side and all the work that we get. You know what I mean? I'm feeling this the healthiest I've felt, and the most athletic I've ever been in my career. So I'm at a great point, and I also am excited for the 2022 season. I think that that was a good little piece of momentum to end that season, and I think that maybe they were writing me off a little bit, but you know, they're back again. Every time they think they're out, I pull them back in. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I think that's just what makes you who you are. And I think it again, you're also, like you say in the gym, you're very quiet. You know, you don't talk to a crazy amount of people. You keep your circle small, which is something I admire about you, right? Because that's how I live my life. And, you know, I think a lot of people do that. They just be like, oh, it's this write-off, you know, right? Oh, okay. You lost one fight. Okay. So now we're just going to write him off. Yeah. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
He's back. So back off.
Yeah. 100%. And, you know, now we'll stay to a little bit of consistency though. You know what I mean? Yep. Because ultimately it's up to me to, you know, they just go with the trends. That's all, you know what I mean?
I think that's the craziest thing about the fight world is, you know, even seeing last night, like seeing Alec Quinta and,
Bobby,
you know, like even Frankie Edgar, those were guys I knew up in New York. It's crazy. Like those guys were like, the headline to everything. And then you see them come down a notch and it's like, I think you and I have talked about this before. Like what point do you like let it go or whatnot, or retire or whatnot? But, my heart like goes out to those guys big time. It's a lot to go well into your 40s. Like look at Glover Teixeira. Like, you just became the champ. How old is he? 42? 40? I think he's older than that.
He's old.
He's a pioneer in the sport, and I think that's like the unruly thing about this whole fight world. But that's always been this case, right? Dirty promoters, dirty management. That's something everyone struggles with. I don't know one fighter that doesn't struggle with that or has had to struggle with it. So I think that I'm praying that with how big this has gotten over the past few years, I'd say the decade, I'm hoping that it turns around, because down there is really so much money to go around. Like look at the PFL, right? You guys had $6 million go out that night. Mm-hmm. So, and with all the pay-per-views and all that stuff like that for UFC, there's no reason you guys can't be taking money home like that. So I'm hoping that changes up and, there's a little more respect, and, they didn't write off the Jets. The Jets have never won a game in probably 10 years. So I'm still a fan, unfortunately, but, I just think that the fight world needs to change just a little bit on that aspect too. But I'm looking forward to seeing, like I said, being in your corner and watching you really grow in the sport. So I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to thank you again so much for coming on. I know it's Sunday, it's your day off, but I really appreciate it. You are one of my absolute favorite people in the world. And I mean that. Just like I said, watching you grow into who you are over the past 4 years. I know it's like, it's been 4 years, but literally going from like 22 to 26, if I have to go back in my life, that was a big growth period for me. And, watching you go through it was even more so just a great feeling to come off on this win this past, 2 weeks ago, and looking forward to this season with you. So thank you again so much for coming on. One question I do want to ask you, I always sign off with, what are your top 3 books? Because I'm going to write these down.
I got you. Okay. So Winning by Tim Grover.
Okay. You got it right on the spot.
I've watched your show. You're not going to catch me slipping. Tim Grover, when you were talking about your mindset, with like, not being able to lose and having being better and somebody else doing like something you're not, this is what's in that book. And the 50th Law, this is written by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. We all know who 50 Cent is, of course, the rapper / director, entrepreneur. But then Robert Greene is the author of the 48 Laws of Power. So the 50th Law is just about applying like rules for being a more fearless, dedicated version of yourself to like life. You know what I mean? That's 2. And then for 3, this one is called Breathe. This is by Hicks and Gracie, and it's like about his life, but he has a lot of like little gems about life in his book. You know what I mean? Like I said, he lives his life like a real martial artist. So the way he processes things and like speaks about them is a refreshing way, and I think people could learn from it. So this book is called Breathe, and it's about Hicks and Gracie.
Beautiful. I haven't had those on there, so I'm looking forward to putting those on. What's crazy is a lot of people actually write back to me and they're like, yeah, I tried out the book that, Ken Farrow, whoever I had on, had recommended. So it's really cool. I haven't read I read half of Winning. I have it actually with me, but I haven't read the other 2. So I'll definitely look those up.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. With the mindset. Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. All right. Any other things you got to sign off on, Jordan?
I appreciate you having me on, first and foremost. Anybody that's listening can check me out on Instagram at 2checkfighter. That's the number 2. And then check fighter. And like we talked about earlier, that's because, you know, MMA, we get paid 2 checks, and the second one comes from winning. So, of course, my goal would be to be a 2-check fighter. And, you know, I'm about to go enjoy the rest of my Sunday with my pit bull. So I appreciate you having me on, and I'll be seeing you this week when we do our strength and conditioning work.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Jordan.
All right.